Hello folks, and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is for anyone who's currently working in the industry as a piercer, a tattoo artist, an apprentice, front of house, or jewelry consultant, or anyone who's looking to get into the industry and interested in understanding some things to look out for when you're trying to work in this field. Today, I'd like to talk to you about non-compete agreements. Non-compete agreements are clauses in contracts that prevent workers from working for a competitor company during or after employment at their current company. These clauses usually restrict people through time, geography, or industry. So an example of non-compete clauses would be signing up to work at a studio and having to sign a clause in your contract that says if you no longer work for this studio, you cannot work at any other studio in a 50-mile radius for the next 3 to 5 years. It might also look like a clause that says if you're getting an apprenticeship with someone, if you do not complete the apprenticeship, you cannot work in another tattoo or piercing studio or in a similar environment within a 20-mile radius for the next 7 years. So basically, these stipulate a set length of time that you cannot work in the industry or in a relevant industry, and a set distance that you can't work in the industry or a relevant industry. And then every now and again, they can be a little bit more industry specific. Now, non-compete clauses were originally designed to protect trade secrets. So, for example, if a company had a super secret special technique for how they made ink for tattoo inks, and their special proprietary ink blend got them the best inks on the market, they don't want someone to go work for them, learn how they make their super special ink, and then go steal it and copy it and make it somewhere else. However, these clauses are increasingly used for underpaid industries that don't really have confidential information. In fact, recent research shows that 30% of non-competes apply to workers who make less than $13 an hour. Frequently, when we hear about non-compete clauses, we often automatically assume like, okay, yeah, that seems reasonable. You don't want someone to go and learn a bunch of trade secrets from your business and then go and take it somewhere else. But in actuality, non-compete clauses, especially in this industry, are almost always aggressive, manipulative, controlling, and just designed to limit worker mobility and the ability to grow in this career and in this field. In fact, I've seen non-compete clauses used as part of abuse in this industry significantly more than I've ever seen them be an ethical or safe thing. Hi folks, I kind of can't believe I'm sitting down to film this, but on my list of things to make videos about for this month, I wanted to talk about non-compete clauses because they are such a big issue in the tattoo and body piercing industry, and a lot of them are used in very abusive manners. And generally, these non-compete clauses do not hold up in a court of law for a whole bevy of reasons that we're going to touch on later in this video. So I filmed this video about non-compete clauses like 2-3 weeks ago, and I was sitting down to get ready to edit it. Is literally like 2 videos away from being up in the queue of things to edit for this content crunch. The Federal Trade Commission has just banned non-compete clause in the United States of America. So everything you're about to learn about non-competes and ethical versus unethical non-competes is going to be null and void as of September, when this new guideline goes into effect. And there's some non-competes that will be allowed to stay, but only for like very, very high level of executives at companies that can prove that they have a valid reason for a non-compete. But basically they found that non-competes were unethical for all of the reasons that I'm going to talk about in this video. And what wild, incredible, fortuitous timing. So I'm still gonna publish and post and edit this video, and obviously, because you're watching it right now, I don't know why I'm saying that, but yeah, so this is just a good educational content about like, you know, what to avoid with non-competes. And I still think the education as far as like ethical versus unethical contracts and what to keep in mind if your studio is making you sign a contract, especially as an apprentice, is still really good. So I'm still gonna post this video, but yeah, if you are in a non-compete or have a non-compete at your studio, I believe the law goes into effect again in September in America. It is no longer valid. It can no longer be enforced. It is gone. Yeah, unbelievable timing. Anyway, back to your regularly scheduled programming and this video about non-compete clauses. One of the big issues with this is that they greatly restrict mobility. Signing non-competes also makes it more difficult for workers to leave for better and higher paying jobs. Changing a job is one of the most common ways workers receive higher pay. Job hopping, especially earlier in one's career, is correlated to stronger lifetime earnings. By limiting where people can work, non-competes decrease competition between industries, consequently reducing overall wages. With limited employers to compete for, workers have less of an opportunity to bargain for a higher wage and demand a better workplace. Especially in this industry where abuse and unsafe workplaces can be so rampant, non-compete clauses can be incredibly powerful ways for studios to back employees into a corner where they have to stay in an unsafe work environment or face no other option than to have to move to a completely different state or a completely different location in order to be able to continue doing what they love doing. I had a very dear friend of mine leave a studio that they had worked for, a relatively well-known and big-name studio that was not treating their staff and their employees well. There were issues of racism in the workplace. Workers were severely underpaid. Piercers were expected to do sometimes 60 or 70 piercings a day, getting paid $10 an hour. It was ridiculous. Overworked, underpaid, poorly treated, but this studio had non-compete clauses and some very, very restrictive non-compete clauses. So your choices were either stay in this situation where you were constantly being treated poorly, where you watched clients deal with racism and sexism and unsafe situations, and where you were being egregiously underpaid, or if you decided to leave, you would basically have to move out of the state because of how restrictive the non-compete clause was. Non-compete clauses also disproportionately affect women and people of color. Studies have shown that women are less willing to violate the terms of non-competes. Women in states with stricter non-compete enforcement are less likely than men to leave their jobs or start rival companies if they are subjected to non-compete. Women and workers of color are also less likely to negotiate than their white counterparts, which may result in more restrictive agreements for them. Further, the earnings of women and workers of color are reduced by twice as much as a white male workers when there is stricter non-compete enforcements. The use of non-competes can be traced back to the Reconstruction era when former owners of enslaved people used non-competes to keep freed black workers working for them and maintain the master-slave relationship. The previous were quotes from Najah A. Farley, who is an incredible resource working for the National Employment Law Project, and I'm going to link the article that I pulled these quotes from and a lot of these studies down below for those who are interested in learning more about the history of non-competes and slavery, the way they disproportionately affect women and people of color, and just some more information about non-competes in general. But these clauses are aggressive and predatory and usually designed to hurt workers and keep them from getting better opportunities, better employment, or making their current workplaces better and safer through negotiation. Now, when it comes to non-competes that are specific to the tattoo and piercing industry, they usually do not hold up in a court of law. And this is because there are general criteria for a non-compete to be considered fair legally. And if a non-compete is not fair for both the employer and the employee, it's probably not going to hold up in court. As far as what constitutes fairness, is it reasonably necessary to protect the employer's rights? Is the agreement unnecessarily restrictive for employees? And is it against public policy? Now, fairness often depends on location and length of time. For example, if you've set a 50-mile radius or a 100-mile radius for someone to not be able to be employed around you, someone might consider that reasonable if we're talking about a small town and this is the only tattoo or piercing studio for 50 or 100 miles. So any competition would be directly affecting them. But if someone has a 50 or 100-mile radius set in a really big city, you are effectively pushing your workers out of the entire city they live in if they decide they don't want to work for you anymore. Another factor is length of time. Saying, hey, you can't work within a certain radius for the next 1 to 2 years, reasonable. But non-competes that I've seen in this industry have said 10, 20, and even 50 years before you can work in the same city again. They're often egregiously unreasonable, and no court would rule that they're fair to the employee. In fact, there's a long history in the tattoo and piercing industry of employees taking their employers to court over non-competes and winning. Now, the struggle is many folks can't afford to fight a non-compete if it does go to court, and many studios have the budget to stonewall the person they're fighting, delay legal proceedings, come up with a bunch of nonsense, and basically cause the former employee to have to spend too much money and too much time on legal fees and court appearances to the point that they just end up dropping the case. So while yes, most non-competes probably wouldn't hold up in court, especially in our industry, most employees also can't afford to have that type of legal battle and see if they can make it through and win. In general, I really don't find non-competes that ethical, and especially not in our industry, and I think they remove a lot of employee power to be able to negotiate and have a safer workplace. And I do think our industry struggles with a lot of very predatory non-compete clauses. So if you're looking to get into the industry, if you're looking to work at a new shop, and they do have a non-compete clause in their contract, I would be a little bit wary of that. And if you are interested in working there, or this is your only opportunity for an apprenticeship or a better job, my biggest tip is to try and negotiate fairly. If owners want to protect their shops from unfair competition, then the employees should be properly compensated for giving up their rights. Limitations on non-competes should be short and reasonable. There should be reasonable clauses for if there's instances of safety violations or legal violations, and if someone is signing a non-compete that's more restrictive, they should be getting something for that back from the studio. Like if I'm expected to sign a non-compete that covers like the whole state or a whole city that I'm working in, or an incredibly long length of time, there had better be something in it for me. That studio had better be giving me a larger percentage of cut, funding travel and guest spotting or continuing education opportunities, or making it worth it for me to legally give up my right to go and work somewhere else if I'm unhappy here. So please, folks, be cautious of non-competes in this industry. If there's one included in your contract, read over it closely, see if it's something that looks like it makes sense. Cross-reference it with local laws. Non-competes are illegal in some states, or there's very strict laws about how they have to be formatted. So do due diligence. So do your due diligence and really research before you sign something with a non-compete. And this goes doubly for apprentices and younger folks in the industry. So many people I know have been taken advantage of by predatory non-compete agreements, and I'm tired of seeing it happening. So we, as the workers, as the employees, as the people who build and make this industry what it is, have to start standing up for our rights. I'm going to put some more resources to learn about non-competes in the description below, and thanks so much for hanging out and letting me talk about something that I think is very important in the modern tattoo and body piercing industry. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.